Today we are gonna look at the power of banned modern cards. Oh, we're gonna look at Hogak right now. Hogak was outrageously ridiculous. A card that actually a lot of people just slept on. It's like, oh, this is really cute. You can't spend mana to cast this spell. You can only cast it with Convoke and Delve. You may cast Hogak Arisen Necropolis from your graveyard. Trample, legendary creature. Oh, it must be a commander card. It's just for that funsy commander format over there. And then once it was starting to get playtest, it was just ridiculously busted. It was actually an advantage that you can't spend mana to cast this spell. You would cheat it by just playing creatures like a grave crawler. You just fill up your graveyard, just exile it all, and put this thing into play. It might have been a lot harder. I mean, if there was like if it was more mana intensive, if you were forced to convoke a lot more. Convoke a lot more to get this thing into play. So this card ended up warping Modern, ended up ruining, you know, GP Las Vegas. Everyone saw it way ahead of time. They saw it was completely on the map. Like, that thing, you have to ban this thing. And what did they ban? They banned Bridge from Below first. A very interesting choice there, Wizards of the Coast. Very interesting. Not that I have anything against this ban. This is a pretty stupid card too. But it was banned sort of ahead of its time. If there was ever a situation where they banned a card for the sins of another card, I would definitely say Bridge from Below was banned for the sins of Hogak. And then they ended up banning Hogak anyway. No, that was a card you couldn't keep in the metagame. That was just unbelievably too powerful. 8/8 Trample? Trample! So you can't even, they could ramp this thing out on turn 2. Happened many times. And then you can't even chump block the damn thing because it's a gigantic 8/8 creature. Even by today's standards, this is pretty rough. Hogak is fair and balanced. I'd be slightly curious to know how today's metagame would solve Hogak's problem. We don't have that many more answers. We have Solitude, we have Subtlety. These are two very popular cards. Solitude is slotted into any control deck. The Omnath deck, in theory, could go in a Hammer Time deck. And then we've got like something like Subtlety that is seen play in some blue tempo decks, but definitely seeing play in Living End. It's legendary, and you can't pay mana. Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry about it. You can't spend mana. It's gonna be hard to get this thing in play. You're right. What was that one? Actually, there was that one drop that really helped this thing. Enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards off the top of your library. When it dies, also mill 3 cards. Was a huge enabler for this thing, both for tap, for using for Convoke, but also filling the graveyard for Delve. Dan Lowe says, Hogak Summer was the worst, most powerful banned card on the list. Hearse might become even more common. Would be. Stitcher Supplier. This was an insane enabler. I remember Frank Karsten made an article basically articulating that Stitcher Supplier in the Hogak deck is Ancestral Recall in terms of like what it can fuel for the deck, because you did play a lot of graveyard creatures that would come back from the graveyard, like Gravecrawler and Vengevine. So Stitcher Supplier did act like card draw. Enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. So it was an incredible comparison to Ancestral Recall. Obviously this card doesn't see any play anymore because it needs a Hogak to get it off the ground. It's a recent uncommon that is worth several dollars, enough said. Oh, is it worth that much money right now? It is, actually. It's still holding its value. Must be good in, actually, maybe, I don't know every format that it's playable in right now. Maybe Pioneer is using it for something. Anyway, yeah, Hogak definitely deserved its... It's really powerful. It's ridiculous. It's above and beyond stupid, so... Hope we don't see that thing again. Seize Legacy play. I hope that's enough. That's enough explanation about the power level of Hogak. Okay, here's one that's really debatable. This one, we could have a debate on this card. Hypergenesis. Suspend 3, green, green, 1 generic. Starting with you, each player may put an artifact, creature, enchantment, or land from their hand onto the battlefield. Repeat this process until no one puts a card on the battlefield. So it's show and tell for as many things as you possibly can until no one can put stuff onto the battlefield anymore. But now, like, the way I'm looking at this card is it's just jank. It's just a jank card. That's all I'm seeing here. We've got I don't look at this thing like it's good. Now, so sure, you can cascade into this. This is the default way of looking at this card. But I don't know if it is going to backfire on you or you're going to put the pressure on them. What are you supposed to, like, I don't know what a perfect Hypergenesis deck looks like, to be honest. But by default, I think it's just a bunch of nonsense. You very often, you may not even have the better things to put into play with Hypergenesis. Does anyone know how to break this card? You could test Hypergenesis in Modern. It's either bad or broken, while leaning towards bad. Well, here, like, look, we have suspend cards that are broken. Living End is a pretty broken suspend card. And that is, like, that is a one-sided board wipe and one-sided, like, a graveyard reanimation. You know, Living End already exists in this format. And it's a really strong deck. It's very, very good. But this is, like, one player's having all the fun. The other player's not having any fun whatsoever. Whereas with Hypergenesis, both people get to spew their hand onto the battlefield. And I can guarantee you, sometimes you don't want to do that. I guarantee there's going to be some games where you're going to, like, help your opponent because they're playing jank or something. You just let them put all their... Imagine, this is actually funny. This card, generally speaking, I think would backfire versus, like, some sort of casual pony-like player. Iona, Emrakul. No, well, yeah, of course you could put Emrakul into play. But it would have to be on, like, your opponent's turn. It's played with all the reanimation targets in one deck. Isochron Scepter? I think Scepter is supposed to be... What's it called? I don't think that would help with this card. There is a finite amount of fun in any given match of Magic, and I want to get all of it. Okay. Living End is largely limited to cycle cards. Hypergenesis can get anything. Yeah, but so can your opponents. Your opponents can also get anything and put anything in play. A Hogak is currently the best deck in Vintage. Whoa! Okay, it's just padding the Hogak ego over there. Hey, Hogak, you need a little bit more of an ego boost? You're the best deck in Vintage. Vintage! I didn't even know you attack in Vintage. What are they even doing with... You have made creatures great in Vintage again. Unbelievable. Alright, so Matthew says, to me it feels like with Living End you are already dumping your strong stuff in the battlefield while drawing cards and leaving your opponent's side empty. Genesis, you gotta hold the useless stuff in hand. Yep. Also, I'm sure with Living End, you can in theory cast your creatures if you can't pull off your combo. With Hypergenesis, I'm assuming you cannot cast the cards in your hand if you cannot cascade. So if there's a Chalice on 0, if there's a Void Mirror, you're screwed! You're just screwed. I'm sure they could still play a very similar, you know, creature package like the Foundation Breaker, though. Also, Living End finds what it needs much easier with cycling while fueling its strategy. If Eureka isn't played in Legacy, Hyper is probably fine to unban in Modern. Really good point by the Millmaster. Really good point. Yeah, Eureka struggles in Legacy, although I will admit Legacy is a little bit more powerful of a format. A little bit more powerful. Didn't know this was banned. Doesn't look good. Well, no, yeah, well, so, you know, with the Wizards of the Coast, their philosophy on unbanning cards is, does this help the format anyway? Is this going to make anybody happy? And the answer with this one is probably not. It's not going to make anybody happy if they I don't think it does anything good for the format, you know what I mean? Even though it's probably jank. It's probably not going to do very much. Probably? Maybe not? It's one of the... It does, like, big things. Okay, we can say it's a powerful card. Let's put it that way. It's a powerful jank card. But I just don't think its win rate would be good. I think its win rate would be... I don't know what it is. I don't know what the proper Hypergenesis deck looks like. Was there something in Extended? Maybe we, let's look up. Extended Hypergenesis. Maybe something existed. Tamaharo Saito. Okay, let's see what Tamaharo Saito did with Hypergenesis. Oh my god, we have Progenitus here. We had a Angel of Despair. Enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. Okay, Terastodon. Enters the battlefield, destroy up to 3 target permanents. Okay, so the idea is your opponent gonna put something in play. We're gonna blow it up. Seeming Spirit Guide. Well, that's banned. In Modern, I would say. Progenitus, a Bogarden Hellkite. Enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players. Thirst for Knowledge. Violent Outburst. Demonic Dread. Hypergenesis. So this looks like the Hypergenesis type deck where they're gonna put stuff in play, but it looks like you're gonna play cards that specifically answer your opponent's stuff. But what if we just put in enchantments? What if you're up against an enchantment deck? Then you screwed, right? You screwed. Remember when Aether Vial was banned and extended? You know what? I don't, but I know that happened. That is ridiculous. They just hold Merfolk back. You know, Merfolk got... Okay, Merfolk didn't actually get Aether Vial banned, but... Yeah, that was a weird time. And I think they were thinking about it for Modern, too, and they just let it go for some reason. For some arbitrary reason. Oh, Nick Carton on the Scarab God. Bestamir creature that hasn't been banned yet. Which means maybe it's not the best Demir creature. I don't know. Are there any Demir creatures on the ban list? I'm not sure. Okay, moving on. Let's talk. If you guys think Hypergenesis is fair, you let us all know in the comments section. This is an absolute beast. Clan Ironworks. I hate artifacts that produce mana, and this is a card that produces more mana than anything else. Okay, 4 mana, sacrifice an artifact, add 2 to your mana pool. Funny thing is this card, the deck was sort of around, but just complete jank for years. Absolute years. And nobody knew how to make a good Clan Ironworks deck until the prophet, Matt Nass, with his golden deck, I don't know, his golden deck construction, built the absolute best Clan Ironworks deck ever imaginable. I can't even go over I don't even remember how old the loops work. It's been so long since this thing has been banned. Is this Ashnod's Altar 2.0? Ashnod's... Oops, there's Ashnod's Altar. Sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless. This is not legal in Modern, thank God. Yeah, basically the same thing. Just 1 more mana. Sacrifice a creature and... Oh, actually, no. It's, you pay 4 mana, but you can sacrifice any artifact. So you can sacrifice, like, Mox Opal, for example. Sacrifice Mox Opal. You can sacrifice Terrarium. And that was the thing. Like, you had things like... What was it? Terrarium? I'll get to that. You know, you hear that sound. You know what that means, chat? Do you know what this song means? You know what it means. It means it's time for our sponsors. FusionGamingOnline.com, your one-stop shop for all your paper magic needs, your singles. Buying my Pauper deck. Oh, that Fairies deck is going to be beautiful, and they've got my Mutagenic Growths and everything else that you need for a Pauper Fairies deck. You can pre-order Dominaria United as well. And don't forget that when you are shopping at FusionGamingOnline.com, my favorite local game store where I buy all my Magic cards, don't forget to use coupon code Nikachu at checkout for an additional 5% off all your purchases, and also supports the channel. We're also going to thank Mana Traders, the premier place for renting Magic cards online to play any format, any deck, anytime you want. You can support the channel by renting using my Mana Traders link in the description below, or save, what is it, 10% off your first 2 months using coupon code Nikachu_9Y6. Rent any deck on Magic the Gathering online. Beautiful. All right, now back to our beautiful Clan Ironworks. Oops, I'm not there. Help me, chat. Scrap Trawler plus Mirror Retriever. Oh, yeah. Scrap Trawler. When Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield through KCI, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser mana value, like Mirror Retriever. Was that just the loop? That's a simple loop. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So you could go get Scrap Trawler. Was that just infinite mana by itself? I always thought that there was a third card. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card with lesser mana value. Oh yeah, and this one's lesser mana value. But there were other loops as well. There were like tons. There was a lot of card draw. And the fact that it ran things like Mox Opal. I can't remember the mana base. But it was a 5-color deck. So it was really hard. Those artifact decks, they're really sneaky. They can play any colors they want, which makes it really hard to... They're really flexible and resilient to hate because of that, because they can run anything in red, green, blue, white, black, anything they need for whatsoever. Simple loop, Chromatic Sphere, Mirror Retriever, KCI. Please stay banned for good. So this card, the fact that it warped the rulings was awful. Yes, it played around with the timing of rulings. I heard there was a lot of judge calls over this card. Joel says, KCI itself is probably the 4th place altar effect with Ashnod's, Phyrexians, and Altar of Dementia above it, but that just shows you free sack is usually broken. Free sack that gets you mana is really broken. When it had, what was the card? It enters the battlefield, I think it draws a card, and when it goes to the graveyard, it draws a card. It's just a simple artifact for 2 mana, so it was great card draw. Which basically let you draw through your entire deck if you start sacrificing for mana. The combo isn't so much complicated as there were a billion combos that could all be stable to each other for partial go-off. Yes. Ichor Wellspring, that's what it was. So this was just insane. Insane of a deck. How did this even win? I don't even remember. I can't remember. Why did I have, like, even a problem with this? I guess because it just combos off before I could kill them. That is a problem. Tapping out to do anything against this deck was just impossible. Altar of Dementia is strong, but it's not a mana producer. I'd put it in 4th. The Clan Ironworks. Look at them. Making mirrors over there. I think they're making mirrors. Parallel lives? What? Parallel lives to double tokens created by tapping artifacts? That wasn't the thing, was it? No. Oh yeah, Pyrite Spellbomb was a win condition. Wasn't it? I don't remember. Do we have to look? Okay, let's go look up. What did this deck look like? Matt, Nass, Krark, Clan Ironworks. What does perfection look like? Okay, we have first place in Grand Prix Las Vegas, 2018. We need a battle, Hogak versus Clan Ironworks, to see who's the supreme champion of Grand Prix Las Vegas's. So we have the Mirror Retriever, the Scrap Trawler, Ancient Stirrings, which helped you find your KCI. Engineer Explosives. Oh yeah! Oh yeah! That's why I have trouble against this deck. I had main deck Engineered Explosives to blow up my merfolk. How nasty! Okay, Mox Opal, Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, Pyrite Spellbomb. Yeah, that was a win condition. Terrarian. Went to the graveyard, you draw a card. Ichor Wellspring, more card draw. Sacrifice it, Mindstone, card draw, and then Clan Ironworks. It looks like a pile. It honestly just looks like a pile of nonsense, but it was a well-oiled machine. Oh yeah, an Inventor's Fair to top it off. Search your library for an artifact card, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And yeah, here you have access to all the color. Well, I guess they just stuck to red and green. Grove of the Burnwells. I don't remember that. It was not as multicolored as you want it to be. Okay, so it's just red-green because that's all you really needed. Destroy target artifacts and enchantments. And counter target blue instant spells. Oh yeah, this was an alternate win condition. Gear per ether grid. Millmaster misses KCI. You miss it, do you? No mocks and negotiation. This deck is not playable in modern. No, it is not. This is the only banned card in Modern that was banned because of one single player. Sort of. The thing is, so a deck like Clan Ironworks, a lot of people didn't want to pick it up because they just thought, oh, it's possible this could get banned, and all my cards are worthless. Because you look at a deck like this. See, this is the problem buying into a deck like this. A lot of cards are going to become junk afterwards. Your Mirror Retrievers, your Scrap Trawlers. I mean, if Mox Opal was going to get banned, well, probably the rest of the deck would still be fine. But like there's like a lot of real nonsense here. Mindstone, Clan Ironworks, Ichor Wellspring, potentially Ether Hub, Grove of the Burn Willows. Like, the only thing, if let's say you ban Clan Ironworks, the only things that would get salvaged are like Mox Opal, Engineered Explosives, and Ancient Steerings, and maybe Inventor's Fair. So there's a huge risk that if you buy into a deck like this, and it gets banned, a lot of the staples are worthless. Whereas a card like, I would say, Omnath, if you bought into Omnath, you shouldn't really care if anything gets banned, because every single individual piece of the Omnath deck is worth money, and it's not like it's gonna lose value if it's gone. Mike Long got Pros Bloom banned when Matt Nass was still playing Pokemon. Prosperous Bloom. Was that deck any good? Or was he just cheating and it got good? So, the deal is, there was a point where Clan Ironworks did get popular enough. Like, they weren't banning it. Like, Matt Nass wins a tournament. Matt Nass wins another tournament. And everyone's like, okay, maybe this is fine to buy into. So a lot of people start playing Clan Ironworks in a tournament. It got 3 finishes in a top 8, and then they banned it. I hate it when they do that. I don't know, maybe that's the way it should be, but I hate it when they do that. When are we looking at spoilers? We are not. We do other things on this channel. Well, when we do gameplay, we can look at spoilers. On the gameplay days. I could see Ironworks being broken if you run token doublers. It allows combos that aren't even infinite to, oh yeah, proc to win condition. That's possible. Yeah, that's possible. Like any combo deck, a player who just bought into it is hard to sit opposite. Yes, it is also hard to buy into. This is one of those weird janky decks you don't really want to play. And I think at the time, like, rental services on Magic the Gathering Online weren't super popular either. So, like, if you wanted, like, to buy into this deck, you, like, really had to buy into it. They are throwing the mirrors into the furnace! Oh, yeah, that's the flavor, isn't it? Not making mirrors. Make other artifacts. Yeah, they gotta throw that scrap! That scrap is just going in there. Alright, we know the power level of this card. Let's move on to the power level of another card. Luris of the Dream Den. I hate this card. I'm happy it's gone. It's also, a fun fact, it's like banned almost everywhere. It's got almost like... It almost was banned more than Oko at one point, because it was banned in Vintage. So close. You're legal in Historic? I guess they can't abuse you yet. Hey, let us know. Do you think Luris of the Dream Den is fine, or should it be on the stay banned? Let's get some idea what people feel about Luris. This was not the cleanest ban. There was a lot of people that wanted Luris to be done with. And it did change the metagame a little bit when it did get banned, but it had its fans, and you know, a lot of people could even still argue like the metagame hasn't changed that much since Luris' banning. You just made life harder for the Death Shadow decks. That's basically it. So for a hybrid of black, white, or Orzhov, one generic, you have a 3/2 lifelinker. With the most broken of all the companion mechanics, each permanent card in your starting deck has a converted mana cost 2 or less. But the advantage is, during each of your turns, you may cast one permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. It's like sort of like Super Snapcaster Mage, but for permanents. But the deal is, it starts in your sideboard, but basically in your deck. You have a main deck, Luris of the Dream Den, in your hand. You just pay this activated ability of 3 generic, and then you put the Luris of the Dream Den in your hand. My problem with Luris is that there was never a late game. It never happened. Basically, anytime you got into the late game, the Luris player just put Luris in their hand, and that game was over. It was just over. They put Luris, they just bring back one creature. It could be anything. It could be Death Shadow, it could be Dragon Rage Channeler. It didn't matter. They just need to bring back one thing, Tarmogoyf. Not to mention, there was a lot of easy loops with Mishra's Bauble. You could tap out and then just play Mishra's Bauble from your hand, sack it, and then replay it from the graveyard. Sacrifice Mishra's Bauble, look at the top card of target player's library, draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So I don't think that you'd ever like play this from your hand unless you drew it that turn, but you would get Mishra's Bauble easily. You can cast your Luris, tap out, play Mishra's Bauble from the graveyard, at least get a card draw. Alright, so what do you guys think? Luris sucks to play against, but not ban worth, in my opinion. Desi says, do you think Luris is a fair card without the companion mechanic? Oh yeah! I think that would be totally fine. I would have no problem. I wouldn't have a problem with this card if it didn't have the companion mechanic. It was an 8th card. Its power was that it was a guaranteed 8th card, and this is like the best late game card you could possibly have. So, I mean, like, this thing on turn 3 is not really all that special. And it was add protection from Thoughtseize. That was another thing. Protection from Thoughtseize. Because it's sitting in your it's sitting in your sideboard. It's not in your hand. Luris just laughing at the Thoughtseize decks. Hammer Time has been worse without Luris too. Oh, you mean I can't. Worse in what way? I'm assuming you mean worse as like the power level is lower, not higher. Okay, pre-errata, Luris was too busted for vintage, so yeah, I don't think the errata is enough to make it okay for modern. The main problem is that it's a guaranteed card in your sideboard that gives you card advantage over other card advantage decks. You know what would have been much more interesting if it limited the spells, all spells in your deck, to converted mana cost 2 or less. That would have been a much more interestingly designed card. Because you could still play Cryptic Command, you could still play Kolaghan's Command in a deck with Luris. Not that it really used a lot of really high spells. I guess it didn't really change much. Death Shadow, you know, basically the main reason this card was banned, it was barely playing anything over 2 mana. Barely! Would you think this card would be okay if the companion mechanic was banned? Yes, I do believe so. Luris is less annoying than KCI. Oh, I mean, the games were still games. There was no late game, but it was still a game. I'll admit that. Luris was far more universal. The timing issue of KCI were so rough. So, I would say, though, on a power level, it wasn't that powerful compared to all the other cards on the ban list. This is just a really efficient card advantage engine. It's an 8th card in your hand at the start of the game, and this whole purpose is to get more cards. So if you ever get to the late game, the player with the Luris is playing up at least 2 cards over the player who's not playing a companion. So if card advantage matters, this card would grind you out for sure, 100%. Egoish. was going to make the argument. I think Luris warped the format to lower CMC, though it should have stayed, or they should have banned Companion entirely. Though it should have stayed, or they should have banned Companion entirely. I think Luris... Did it? I don't think it did. Because you look at the control decks, you look at Omnath, you look at Crashing Footfalls, you look at Living End. I mean, they still have quite a bit of a chunky curve, don't you agree? I will agree with this. It promoted speed, because the only way you beat card advantage is with speed, or better card advantage, like the Omnath deck did. Or more companions. Or more value, like Yorion blinking all the stuff in an Omnath deck. It was an interesting time. It was not one of the most powerful cards on this list. It was just one of the best cards. It's definitely a very strong card. It's a strong card advantage engine. It's insane. But it's not like tearing people apart like Hogak did. Hybrid mana is what pushed it over the top. They all had hybrid mana. Is Yorion Money Pile still good with Yorion? Oh yeah, of course. It's preferred with Yorion, but it's costs more money. You gotta spend more money on fetch lands and more money on your mana base. MTG Gaming Bob, Luris would be a bit more fair if it created a token copy and exiled the card from a graveyard instead. That is way better design. That's actually really smart. I had never heard of that suggestion. Yeah, one problem was that you could just loop the same thing in the graveyard. Like, you don't even want to attack into your opponent to trade, because you're not actually trading anything. Your creature dies and it'll just bring it back from the graveyard. But if it was consistently exiling, that would be different. Never heard of that. The errata almost helped Luris by preventing it from being played on turn 3 and being unable to cast something from the graveyard. Well, I mean, that's the thing. If they didn't make the errata, they would just ban all the companions. All the companions would have been gonzo at that point. I hope they learned from Companion and they never print those things again. Oh, Chris. Don't assume so much with Wizards of the Coast. Maybe they won't come back to this mechanic. This was such a hated mechanic. It was insanely hated. And lifelink, why? Well, I don't know. It makes no sense. Where is Lutri banned? It's banned in Commander. Lutri is banned in Commander. Because it's just a free card in Commander. Banned! There's like no cost to playing Lutri whatsoever. And nothing is safe from fire design. Forged from the fire, anything can happen. You can easily interact with Luris though. No, you can't. So that's where you trick yourself into thinking this is fair. You cannot interact with Luris very well. So first off, it's stuck in the sideboard. You can't interact with your opponent's sideboard. So they are guaranteed to have a Luris in their starting hand every single game. And what happens is when they bring Luris into their hand, they have priority. You can't do anything about it. So they have priority, they get Luris in play, and then once Luris is in play, they have priority again. You can't interact with that thing again. Well, I mean, you would have to, at best, like, exile their graveyard in response to Luris resolving, but it's still... they still get the free Luris. But then, even if Luris is on the battlefield, let's say you have removal, you spend your removal on... You can't use the removal on Luris just yet. You cast the Luris, enters the battlefield, they have priority. They bring a creature or some artifact or something back from the graveyard, and then you can kill the Luris, but they still got value. So you see how warped that is? So they got 2 cards for nothing. For absolutely nothing. Were you going to spend cards on Luris and whatever they brought back from the graveyard? So yeah, it was very hard to interact with. It was insanely difficult. I never lost to a companion Luris. I lost to Luris constantly. Can you Someone, I just saw it for a flash of a second. Can you pithing needle the companion thing? No, you cannot. Luris is the reason why you keep an Inquisition and Thoughtseize late in the game. But that doesn't do anything. If they have enough mana, they can just put Luris in hand and play it. And also, mind you, Luris, a lot of the Luris decks, not all of them, Hammer Time didn't have access to this, but a lot of the Luris decks played Inquisition and of Kozilek and Thoughtseize themselves. So they knew what you had in your hand if you could deal with their Luris. And they just, at the right moment, put into their hand. We've got Energizer here. Companion mechanic was so fun in limited building decks, but when they nerfed it, it was so feel bad. Well, good. Yeah, they banned Lutri before release. It was already banned ahead of time. Breaking news: TCG players being bought out. Is that true? Okay, I'll look at that later. I still think companions are mostly fine, but Luris might have been a problem, admittedly. Hammer Time regularly. Anyway, okay, so I think Luris was very, very good. It's hard to describe the power level of Luris because I think in terms of power, it's actually quite garbage compared to a lot of the cards on this list. It was just a card advantage engine, and it was a very clunky card advantage engine when you think about it. You have to spend 3 mana to put this guy in your hand, you gotta put this thing on the battlefield, and then you gotta have enough mana to put something into play without Luris dying in the first place. So it was a very, very clunky card advantage engine, but it was the best card advantage engine. It was the best card advantage. Crazy stuff. So, what do we have next here? Ho ho! Mental Misstep. Man. Did this even have a shot in Modern? Did it even have a chance? Did it even exist for a second? I don't think so. So for 1 Phyrexian, counter target spell with converted mana cost 1. I always wonder, like, what would Modern look like if this thing was legal? Millmaster says, unban! Igor says, busted! I misstep your misstep. Well, that's the problem. That's actually, this is the main reason, Death Knight, why this thing is not legal. Because it would just turn into a huge battle of the mental misstep. Everyone would play mental misstep. I don't know if that's what it looks like in No Ban Modern. Does every deck play mental misstep? I don't know. I can't remember. I know I played in my decks, and a lot of the decks I played against had mental misstep, but it would be a war of like Deathrite Shaman, mental misstep, mental misstep. No, mental misstep. So it's just a bunch of people mental misstepping over each other. It's like one of those types of cards. Well, everyone gets to play it, so, and it would homogenize decks to some degree. Whoa, what is this thing doing on my screen as I tune in? It's an abomination. Is that a mirror? Is that a mirror getting zapped? Because I don't know any mirrors that are for 1 mana, so I don't know if that's flavorful. Yeah, whoever draws more mental missteps wins. Bugs Bunny, our mental misstep. Yeah, our mental misstep. Everyone's mental misstep. Great, you misstep my misstep, and we all have 4 copies. Doesn't really do anything. So I think, like, in theory, I'm not sure about this, because I never played Legacy when this thing was legal. And they were asking, hey, what's the best card in the format? And they just said mental misstep. I think this slows down the format, which could be a good thing. You know, 1-drops aren't going to get out of control. Like, what would it do today? It would just help to beat Ragavan, Dragon Rage Channeler, Death Shadow. Although it would be very good in the Death Shadow deck too. Oh god. Help them reduce their life total and also interact with the opponents for nothing. It's Memnite? Oh, could be Memnite, yeah. The outrage is justified. Misstep was just as good as you had heard. Modern can't allow free spells in this economy. Yeah, it's another free spell. Answering things for no mana is just stupid. Christopher Rocco here, 30 minutes late into the stream, but he'll see this later. Hypergenesis is just a slower version of Eureka. You get 3 turns to figure out what you want to keep inside your hand versus Eureka, where you're just effing right away. I appreciate you, Chris. Yo, yeah, you can imagine waging a war with Thoughtseize and Inquisition. Thoughtseize, no, mental misstep. Mental misstep, mental misstep. Both players are already down to like... One player would be down to 14. In Modern, it would slow down aggro decks, but it would power blue-red too much. Misstep your turn 1 removal on Ragavan. Oh, that is a really good point. This nails a lot of turn 1 removal. It hits Fatal Push, it hits the Unholy Heat. In some cases, Path to Exile, Lightning Bolt. So, save 1 life versus burn, as they I don't know, Lava Spike you. Lava Spike, mental misstep. I'm only going to take 1 damage, thank you. Sorry, I'm going to only take 2 damage, thank you very much, not the full 3. So, this is a very powerful card. It's a 0-mana counter, and as a format, especially Modern, gets more and more mature, there's just more and more 1-drops just filling the format. I have to admit, I would really like to have a counter versus Hammer, like Colossus Hammer or Sigarda's Aid or any of those other stupid cards. That would be convenient. Make a misstep, but instead of 2 life, reveal an island or a land that produces blue and discard it. Oh, that's interesting. Make a free spell, but you have to discard an island or blue card. That is an interesting design, actually, to be honest. It's like foil. It's like you're taking foil, but saying we're only going to counter. We're only going to counter 1-drops. That is a very interesting design. I like it, actually. I sort of like it. Legacy with this legal was literally every single deck playing 4X. Even stuff like Goblins played Misstep to protect their own vials. Absolutely, you do what you gotta do. Doesn't hit elementals. Yeah, it does not hit the big chunkier decks. Isn't that just Force of Will? No, so long as this is only counter target spell with converted mana cost 1. So it's very narrow. It's very, very narrow. But make no mistake, hey, 0 mana, counter spell. You know, it's like it's not like Force of Will. What can I even compare this to? Mental Misstep is like in a league of its own. It's like one of the best. This is a very, very powerful card on the Modern ban list. Very powerful. I have to admit, most of these cards are going to be powerful because the Modern ban list is pre-tuned. Ah, yes! Mox Opal. I'd like to think I actually contributed to getting this card banned. I think this is... I honestly think it's on the power level of the OG Moxen. Like, it's really close. Really, really close. Because for an artifact deck, it's basically a super Moxen. It is Mox Sapphire, Ruby, Medallion, Jet, and Sapphire, all combined into one. A 0 mana legendary artifact. Add 1 mana of any color. Activate this ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts. Its downside is that it is legendary, so you can't stack the opals together. But pulling off Metalcraft is like the easiest thing in the world for the artifact decks. I remember all of the affinity players, all the artifact players, like, well, it's fair because you have to build your deck around artifacts. Oh, big whoop. Big, big whoop. Worst case, this is a Lotus. Mox did nothing wrong. Good God, did Mox do everything wrong. We were, for years, banning all the cards surrounding the Mox Opal, instead of just banning the Mox Opal. I mean, I don't doubt that if you ban Mox Opal, Clan Ironworks is going to be a great deck anyway. So it's still going to be a great deck. But, it was super overpowered because of stuff like Mox Opal. And then the affinity decks were so good because it could play all 5 colors. If you saw an affinity deck back in the day, what were they playing? They were playing Galvanic Blast, Thoughtcast, but then they were playing like that white removal card. It's like, I think it was like tap a creature, but exile it if you have Metalcraft, and then it could play Thoughtseize, and it could play green to destroy artifacts and enchantments. It had it all. Artifacts and enchantments are the best permanent type in the game. Hardest to interact with. Yeah, when they get out of control, they're really out of control. We got Urza that does something similar once he is down. True story. A lot of people thought Urza was the problem, not Mox Opal. Well, we don't see Urza almost at all now. So I disagree. Mox Opal was the problem the entire time. Yeah, dispatch. This is what Mox Opal enabled. They could play anything. The Mox Opal decks were 5-color decks, if they wanted to be. And of course, Hardened Scales made use of this card. Where are all the artifact decks? Cheerios! Let's do the stupid Mox Opal artifact deck roll call. We had Affinity, Hardened Scales Affinity, Cheerios, Lantern Control. There was also another artifact prison deck. I don't know if it had an actual name. Clan Ironworks. Urza / Oko. Mox Opal abomination thing. Am I the only person who thinks there's 6 to 8 cards that should be considered for an unban? Well, if you include the artifact lands, I agree. Am I missing anything? I'm definitely missing something. Cloudstone Curio. Oh, Word Prison. That was a deck. Yeah, yeah, or the blue-red version with Goblin Engineer. True story. Yeah. So a lot of these decks were super oppressive. Lantern Control was KCI power. Make no mistake, Lantern Control was KCI power, but KCI just was a better graveyard deck. It was just a better artifact deck in general. Because if you put things in the Lantern couldn't beat the KCI deck because putting stuff in the graveyard was meaningless to the KCI deck. They didn't care. Thopter Sword. Oh, I have to admit, this combo sort of sucked. It was just better when Urza came around and actually turned into an infinite combo. Should I trade my foil Imperial Seal for a borderless Mox Opal? You could do that now. And you know what? Like, hey, this is a really good lesson in cards getting banned. Like, I think this was around 120 bucks, so it lost half its value. But it was still worth something. Like, it didn't go to 0. So if you're ever afraid of your cards getting banned, just ask yourself, does it see playing Commander? Like, you're not going to lose all your value. The biggest loss is you just can't play it in the deck that you bought. Eggs! Oh, totally forgot about that one. That's a very good one. Actually, did it see playing eggs? I'm pretty sure it did. I'm 99. We'll just go look this up quickly. Eggs. Modern eggs. Better put MTG in there, because I'm definitely gonna get, like... how old is this deck? Oh, this is too new. Stanislav Sivka. There we go. Okay, we've got the deck. I'm pretty sure... I can't remember if it played Mox Opal. See, it didn't have Mox Opal. Maybe not every deck played Mox Opal. Yeah, I remember... I don't know what it was. They played Lotus Bloom instead. Yeah, Sivka. Okay, so Mox Opal was a card in eggs, but it was just Sivka's design did not play it. I'm guessing is the case. Yeah, but he got to play Gitaxian Probe. Yeah, Gitaxian Probe is one Gitaxian Probe. What a weird one to have in the deck. Silence. Anyway, we aren't at Second Sunrise yet. This deck took turns that lasted forever. The finals lasted like 3 hours. Yeah, I know. Finals against Watanabe. Howdy, howdy. Thanks so much for the super chat, Kyle Driver. I appreciate it. Good morning. Can you explain eggs? I've never bothered to learn it. What the soul of the deck is to basically sack all your artifacts for mana, and then bring them back with Faith's Reward and Second Sunrise. And a lot of these artifacts, like Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star, draw cards. And Conjurer's Bauble, sacrifice it, put up to 1 target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, draw a card. So what you can eventually do is you get your... Where's your win condition here? Pyrite Spellbomb is your win condition. So the idea is, when the time is right, you can create an infinite loop of drawing cards and putting stuff on the bottom of your library with Pyrite Spellbomb. Putting Pyrite Spellbomb on the bottom of your library. I think what you can do is you can Conjurer's Bauble. What is the loop exactly? I don't know the clean loop. I just know the basic idea. There's an additional cost to cast a spell, sack an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card. Return to play everything that you sacked. Return to play everything that you sacked. You can put cards from the bottom of your library on top of your library. Yeah, I guess you have an infinite loop here. You could sacrifice several Conjurer's Baubles to put, like, reshape... Like, when there's 2 cards left in your... Or, like, there's... Can you just do it when there's 1 card left? I hope I explained the gist of it. I just don't remember how it looked like. I barely played against this deck when it was around. It was just getting banned when I was getting into Modern. It was just getting banned. You can see all my testing. Yes, you can see all my testing. Couldn't you counter their win con with a Pithing Needle? Maybe, but you wouldn't have that in the main deck. You would have that in the sideboard, and then they would probably bring in some answers to. Oh, no, actually, do you know what? Okay, hold on. Let's get to Stanislav Sipska's deck. They had an alternate win condition with Grape Shot. So if you brought in stuff like Pithing Needle, they would like he would bring in his alternate win conditions, and he has Echoing Truth if he really needed to. But if there was a case where, like, let's say you even play Slaughter Games or something to get rid of the Pyrite Spellbomb, then there would be a Grape Shot sitting there also in the main deck to potentially kill you. So it wasn't so easy. Alright, sorry about that detour. I hope you all enjoy the detour. We go back into Magic's history. Dylan, thanks so much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Original artifact lands basically generate 2 mana per turn in Infinity decks. They are the most powerful lands in Magic. Disagreed. Hard disagree. Artifact lands are good, but not the most powerful. I would just actually say fetch lands might be the most powerful. If they printed better affinity cards, because I think most of the affinity cards right now are just junk, maybe that could be the case. Okay, let's move on. I think we said enough about Mox Opal. I think it's one of the most powerful cards. I think it's up there with the actual Moxen. Not as good, because you can't stack them, but pretty damn good. Here's a card that actually doesn't belong on the ban list at all. If there was a card that should be on the ban list, it should be Karn the Great Creator. So Mycosynth Lattice, 6 mana. For all permanents or artifacts in addition to their other types. All cards that aren't on the battlefield, spells, and permanents are colorless, and players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Oh, Broman! Thank you so much for the super chat. I think those are Czech crowns. Thanks so much for the 20 Czech crowns. I appreciate it. Egoist also agrees fetches are the most powerful. You missed Gitaxian Probe. We were here. Or hold on, did we do Gitaxian Probe yet? Oh no, that was in the past. We're in alphabetical order. Go see the replay. This is part 3 of was probably, I don't know how many part series we're gonna do this. It's just gonna keep going on. Okay, so what is this combo with? Karn the Great Creator was the best combo. So Karn the Great Creator already. So all you have to do is put 1 Mycosynth Lattice in your sideboard, and Karn says activated abilities of artifacts your opponents control can't be activated. Not so symmetrical here. And so you -2 search for an artifact card you own from outside the game or in exile, reveal that card and put it into your hand. So you go get your Mycosynth Lattice, you put it on the battlefield. Everything is an artifact, including your lands. And so Karn says, well, you just don't do anything anymore. With Karn and Lattice on the battlefield, your opponents cannot tap anything for mana. You can't activate an ability, you can't do anything. It's just over. It's just over. It was a super feel bad combo. And it really fueled these Karn the Great Creator decks. Karn the Great Creator is still good without this combo, but it was deadly. It's super deadly, especially in the Eldrazi Tron decks. Karn plus Lattice was a win. Does Karn still win without Lattice? Oh yeah, absolutely, because Karn gives you access to this huge sideboard of cards. Karn is still a great card. But it is clunky though, and Modern is getting pretty fast. Turn 4 win every time was so fun. That's true. So you get Tron mana by turn 3. You play your Karn the Great Creator, and then you get Mycosynth Lattice out. By the way, give me feedback for this specific tune, if you like it or not. It's a bit of a weird one. It's the Saturn Valley from Earthbound. I don't know if it's so many people can appreciate it. I can't tell if it's chill or being annoying. I like it because I played the game, but I don't know about the rest of you. But I don't think he just wins without Lattice. No, there's no instant win with Karn the Great Creator. And by the way, you can combo this with, what's it called? I guess you wouldn't want to do this. Collector Oof. That's all artifacts, including your own gets hit. Okay, Ramen likes the music. Reese likes the music. Karn was restricted in Vintage immediately because you can search your Time Volt and Voltaic key. GG, oh yeah. Sick Josie. Earthbound, what a classic. Earthbound good. Music is fine. Good, sounds good. Okay, so Mixed Lattice is... It's not really that powerful a card. In fact, it saw absolutely no play until Karn the Great Creator came by. So this actually is like a super weak card on the ban list. It's a great enabler, sure, for maybe some deck that's going to lock down artifacts or blow them up or something like that. But if we're speaking seriously, this card is absolute garbage. It didn't see play in Modern ever at all, and it only started seeing play because it comboed with Karn the Great Creator. But in reality, it's Karn's fault, not Mycosynth Lattice. And Karn is great without Lattice, and Lattice is useless without Karn. So the real powerful card here is Karn the Great Creator. But I will agree that the format is more fun with Karn the Great Creator and without Lattice. Like, Lattice is useless to Modern. But I would say this is, if anyone was looking at the ban list, the Modern ban list, and they said, what is so good about Mycosynth Lattice? Everything is an artifact? Who cares? All cards that aren't on the battlefield, spells and permanents are colorless? Who cares? Players may spend mana as though it were mana of any color. Is that why it's banned? But it's 6 mana. Don't worry if you're confused. It's a trash card. It's useless. Yes, Lattice or Karn had to go. So I think Modern is more fun with Karn in existence. So players can play with Karn in their deck. It enables... It gives some hope to, like, Tron decks, Eldrazi Tron. Some Lantern players play Karn, so they can get, like, lock pieces like Ensnaring Bridge. I don't actually know if they get Ensnaring Bridge with Karn. Not all the decks play Karn in Lantern. Sugarcane, thanks so much for the super chat. Unban Mycosynth Lattice. Ban Karn. Let my dream of Vandal Blast. Well, you can still have that dream. You just play with, what do they have right now that turns things into artifacts? Liquid Metal Coating? Yeah, Liquid Metal Coating turns things into artifacts. You can do that. I guess you just don't get a big Vandal Blast is what you're saying. I still think the Lattice ban was the right choice. Karn is good, but not busted without Lattice. I guess so. I think Karn is going to be in one of those spots where as they print more and more artifacts, this is going to be a bigger and bigger problem. But, lo and behold, Mycosynth Lattice, trash, absolute trash in the, on the ban list. Doesn't belong, where I don't want to say it doesn't belong, but it's like maybe one of the weakest cards on the ban list for sure. One of the weakest. Oh yeah, it's, Coffers plays the Karn Bridge thing. True story. Well, almost every Karn deck plays Bridge, because it's a way of stalling the game until you're ready to win the game. Mycosynth Lad. Oh yeah, and Karn uses has this like really weak land destruction with Liquid Metal Coating. Lattice doesn't really do anything positive for gameplay. But it didn't really do anything either. Like, it literally does nothing. It saw no play in Modern whatsoever. Ever in the history of Modern until Karn came out. Anyway, okay, that's it for Coffee and MTG today. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate you all showing up. We do this Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. Be there or be square if you want to be part of that conversation. Thank you very much, everyone, for the super chats and everyone who's become a member. Lets me know you love Coffee and MTG, and we got to keep this up every weekday morning. But thank you, the chat, because without you guys, there'd be no conversation. I need you guys. Valero's like, Wii Sports, my childhood. Is it that old? Oh, God. Am I showing my age? Doesn't feel that long ago, but maybe you're right. It's been a hot minute since the Wii has come out. So, but thank you very much, because without all of you, there'd be no conversation. This show is nothing without you guys. I'm not the show, you guys are the show. So as usual, keep brewing up those coffees, and we will keep brewing up the magic. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you at the next cup.